Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Overfield-Zook, and I am the Director of Programs here with the Shenandoah Community Capital Fund. And today we're going to be talking about business plans. Now, we have a fabulous template that you can use that's linked here, but I'm also going to share my screen so you can kind of follow along as we go through this little session today. So, as you know, if you've been through any of our programs like Business Bootcamp, we don't always put a big focus on business plans. Business plans are a large document that take a lot of time to write everything up. So a lot of times we focus on something like a lead model canvas or a startup canvas just to kind of get you going. That being said, there's going to be countless times where you're going to need a business plan, right? That might be because you're applying for a loan, whether with a bank or with SCCF. You could be wanting to pitch investors, or you could be applying to some sort of program, like additional program, or maybe a pitch competition. So having a business plan that's in place is critical for your business. That being said, if you've done one of our lead model canvases or our startup canvases, it's going to be pretty easy to fill in all the information. So this template is a great format for you to use. Again, linked here in the video. And what we're going to do is just kind of go step by step so you know exactly what you need to include in each section, things to look out for, and just some advice and some things that can help you make your plan even better once it's all done. All right, so the very first page seems kind of straightforward, is our cover sheet or our cover page, right? You can delete this little section when you're done with it. And you can leave it business plan. You can call it business plan for application for a loan, business plan for application to this. If you want to change the name, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. A few little things that seem silly to say, but I think are actually really important. Make sure you include your contact information, right? And it can't tell you the number of times that people, submit something and we're like, but we don't know how to get in touch with you. So make sure you include that. Also, make sure you include your date. I think this is just good because your business plan will develop as your business develops, right? Things will change, things will get tweaked. That's okay, that's normal. But if you have the date there, that ensures that you always know which one is the most recent and most up to date. Next, we have this confidentiality lettering or wording here, which definitely keep that in there as well. Obviously, just change your name here at the bottom. This just lets people know, whoever it is that's reading it, whether that's a banker or someone on a selection committee for a pitch competition, knows that this information that you're sharing is privileged information, right? And that's not something that they should just be sharing broadly to anybody on the street. Okay, so keep that in there as well. All right, next we come to our table of contents. And for the most part, you're going to hit every single one of these points here. For the purposes of our video, we're actually going to start with section 2 instead of the executive summary, and you'll see why in a minute. Excuse me. Okay, so skipping over to the business description. All right, the business description is really a high-level overview of what your business does and how you do it. All right, it should be something that people can understand quickly, and so that they know what your business does at a high level, right? This isn't the place to get into the numbers or sales models or anything like that. It's really more about kind of just what the business is overall. All right, so if you're looking at, here, let me scroll down here. So we're looking at the same part here, skipping the executive summary. Okay, here we go. So first we have our mission statement, right? So the mission statement is why you do what you do, right? Why is this important? Why are you personally passionate about this? And what do you want to solve, right? What gap are you filling by your business? If you've gone through our programs before, you've heard me say this 100 times. If you can't make it impressive, meaning you don't have 1,000 followers on your social platforms and you've already done 10,000 in sales, if you can't make it impressive, make it important, right? Make this really important so that people care as much as you do about what you're doing with your business. Next, you have the products and services. This is, again, a really easy to understand outline of what you offer as a business. What are you selling, right? And not necessarily how are you selling it and how are you pricing it, but just what are you selling? What do you offer? Is it a coaching service? Are you selling candles? You can do a little description of that there. Next, what are your strategic goals, right? What are you hoping to get out of this business, right? As far as revenue, longevity? Do you plan to, grow a certain amount in a certain amount of time? Do you have a vision of, I want to be able to leave my full-time job and start working full-time on my business after 5 years, right? And always remember to keep your goals smart, right? We can all have goals about, how we want to impact people's lives and make things better, but those aren't necessarily specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tangible. So just keep that in mind. Using that SMART format will really help make your goals really clear to everyone who's reading. Next, we have our SWOT analysis. Now, a SWOT analysis is a great thing to do regardless. This is a little exercise. You can find them online. It's kind of like a little grid where you outline your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And this is a way to highlight what makes you strong as a business and as a business owner and as a business model, but also acknowledging that there are challenges. The reality is that there's always going to be challenges for us as a business owner, no matter how brilliant our business idea is. And to think otherwise is to not necessarily be realistic. And that's one of those things we really want to show everyone who's reading our plan, is that yes, we have goals and we know exactly how to achieve them, but we also are based in reality, right? We know that life is hard sometimes. All right, moving on to section 3. This is one of the really important sections. And I think sometimes people shy away from this section because we're going to talk about competition, and that sometimes is really scary to admit. But remember, competition isn't a bad thing because it proves proof of concept that people are willing to pay other people to do this. So why not you? And so take your time with this section, right? Really delve into each one of these subtopics here. Again, doing a really thorough job here in your market analysis is proving to whomever's reading it, whether that's, again, a loan officer or whatever, you're proving to them that you've done your homework, right? You've really looked and you've said, okay, yep, this is what is going on out there in this industry. Here's who are the main players. This is how it's growing, right? Being able to show that really proves that you've done your work and know what you're doing. So the first thing you want to look at, again, are those industry trends, right? Just like I was saying about, this is how it's growing. Is it something that's really cutting edge, right? And so maybe doesn't have as saturated a market, but it's a little bit more risky. Or maybe it's super saturated. And so there's tons of money on the table for you to take, but then there's also a lot of competition. So, just try and give a sense of what the industry looks like as a whole. And I want to make sure in this part overall, but especially in this part with the industry trends, try to avoid jargon. There are words that we all have being within certain industries that we use every day and are just really familiar to us, but try to avoid those words or at least explain what they mean. The last thing you want is for someone who's reading your business plan to be confused, right? All right, next up is your target market. This is also known as your ideal customer, right? Who are you trying to reach? Who are you trying to sell to? How old are they? What are their habits? How do they decide what to buy? Is it because they saw it on Instagram, or is it because their friend told them, or because they Googled it, right? Get as specific as possible and give a profile, right? Kind of lay it out and say, this is my ideal customer, and give all this detail. Next, you have your analysis of competition, right? And again, this can be stressful and you might feel like, oh gosh, why am I telling people about my competition in my business plan? But again, it's about you having done your homework and knowing exactly the realities of what you're stepping into, okay? And here's the thing. If you can show that you know who the competition is, in the next section, you can show how you're different, right? So in section C, analysis of competition, talk about who the other players are, how their people interact with them and how they're shopping. And then in section D, show how you're different, right? And that's such a critical part, because competition is just a way to prove that you know what's going on out there and you're going to do it better, right? And lastly, promotions and marketing. How are you going to help people know? How will people learn about you? Why will they be motivated to buy from you in particular? Are you selling it in a different way? One of my favorite stories is about Dollar Shave Club, right? They didn't invent the razor, but they just created a way for people to buy it and to have a subscription. And so it just keeps being sent to their house and they don't even have to think about it, right? So How are you doing it? How is it different? How is it going to benefit people? How are you going to market to them? Are you going to use influencers? Are you going to share it in the newspaper? Are you going to do traditional media where you're doing, radio spots and TV advertisements? Just how you think about it. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next section, we have our operations plan. All right. This is the nuts and bolts of how things are going to happen every day. Now, again, this is one of those sections that might change the most as you actually move into your business and are running it for several years. But for the sake of the plan, have a plan, right? Have ideas on how you're going to run it, even if it ends up changing. Okay. So the first one is, that idea of what are your hours going to look like? If you're a service business, how many weeks out of the year do you plan on practicing? If you're a brick and mortar store, what are your hours? When are you going to be open? Where are you going to be open? Do you want to be downtown? Or are you going to be, is this going to be some beautiful sprawling property out in the county? What is your facility like, right? And where are you planning to be located? Next is you have staffing. A lot of times we try as entrepreneurs to do everything ourselves, right? But there will reach a point where you're going to need help, right? Whether that's part-time staff to be waiters at your restaurant, whether that's people who are stuffing bags, or whether that's a co-founder, or people who you plan on hiring down the line for more technical, high-wage jobs. What will their specific responsibilities be? And indicate here, like, hey, once I have X amount of money or whatever, this would be my first hire, right? I would hire, a marketing director, or I'd hire someone who's in charge of operations, or, I'm going to need 5 part-time staff to even open, right? So just think about who is going to work with you. Next, we have our supplies. Okay, so this is what are you going to need as far as inventory, right? What do you need to make your product if you're making something, right? What are your supplies? And then what will your production look like? Is this something that, your thing's always going to be made by hand? Is this something that you'll be able to put into some sort of scalable assembly line? If this is something that, you're a consultant, your supplies are going to look a lot different, right? You're going to make sure you have a good, internet connection and good computers, and maybe some sort of, notebooks and things like that you might need. Great. So that's your operations plan. All right. Next up, this is the fun part. Okay. The management profile is all about you, right? Previous to now, we've talked about the plan a lot, the business a lot, right? But now you're going to talk about yourself and why you are the person to run this business. All right. Who are you? What's your background? What makes you qualified to fill this out, right? What does the ownership look like, right? Is this a sole proprietorship? Is this an LLC? Is this an S corp, etc., right? So again, that's what we're really trying to summarize here is why you, right? So the first thing is to think of the personal history of key participants, right? If that's just you, then you just have to cover yourself. If you have co-founders, give everybody a profile to talk about what unique skills they're bringing, what the unique things they have in their background that's going to make them a fantastic business owner. Okay. Next is duties and responsibilities. Who's going to do what, right? Now, this should be covered again if you have co-founders in your operating agreement. This should have been conversations that you already had. So honestly, it's kind of a cut and paste, right? If it's just you, it's kind of you. But this also could be a part where you say, hey, it's just me, but I'm going to hire a CPA. And this is just me, or I have someone who's contracting to do marketing for me, right? This is where you can put that. Next is your compensation, right? How much are you planning to make? How are you paying yourself, right? Is this going to be an owner's draw? Are you going to put yourself on salary? Obviously, that depends on what kind of business entity you have, what you're allowed to do. And yeah, just always remember, pay yourself, right? That's just a good reminder. And lastly, what other resources do you bring to the table, right? Are you a member of the Chamber of Commerce already? Do you have, sorry, I lost my page. There we go. Do you have, people within your family who can work for you pro bono as legal experts, and all of that kind of stuff? Are you a member of, one of SCCF's programs, or a graduate of one of our programs? Put all of that in there. Okay. Next up, we have the financial analysis, and this tends to be the part where people get really overwhelmed. Okay, this is where heads explode because it's all about the numbers, right? It's all about the money. But it's broken into 5 sections and you got this. Okay. So the first one is startup costs, right? How much do you need to open your business, right? Whether that's, I need money for a lease and I need these employees and I need this much inventory, or whether it's I could open tomorrow because I just need computer and internet connection and some marketing, right? So think about how much you need, list this here. A nice little spreadsheet is the best way to do it, right? So kind of cut and paste, make a little table so all the numbers add up and it looks really great. How are you going to find that money, right? Where is this coming from? Will it be something that you put in all the money yourself? Or is this the loan that you're asking for? Are you asking for a loan for startup costs to cover? What will it look like when you have those funds? Will there be a time where you're retrofitting a property, or you need to build up some sort of inventory by doing a lot of production ahead of time? This is one of those sections with the financial overview kind of in general, where you're probably going to have both numbers and commentary. So like numbers and written parts, kind of context in each subsection. Section B is probably just going to be narrative, right? Just written out. But sections C and D, we might have more stuff there later. Okay, so next up is our income statement projection. Again, projection. If you've been in business for a while, you can absolutely use actual numbers from your income statement or your P&L. But because they're the same thing, right? Your income statement and P&L. But if you are new and you haven't opened yet, just use a projection. We have videos on doing all of these financial statements also on this YouTube channel. So check that out if you need help there, including templates. So the key with this is with the projection is it's a best guess estimate of how much you're going to make over the next period of time, whether that's a year or 2 years. Okay. Next, we have our monthly cash flow projection and assumptions. And again, this is getting into the nitty gritty about, where will the money come in, or how will the money come in, and where will it go out? Prove here that you have enough money to pay your staff and your bills, right? You're breaking even so that you can do that. And then this is where we want a little bit of narrative, is how are you making those assumptions, right? You're making that assumption, you're making sure you're including seasonality into your assumptions. You're making sure that you've accounted for kind of opening day surge and then maybe a little bit of a taper off within your projections, right? So this is one of those sections where you're going to want to have, again, a nice spreadsheet with all of these projections projected out, probably over a year, maybe 2, and then a little bit of context. Now, another thing that people love to see is kind of some different models, right? Do one that's a little bit more conservative, right? Where the numbers aren't maybe growing as quickly as you hope and you think that they might. And then do one that's a little bit more, hopeful and a little bit more exciting, right? That you think could happen, right? If things really take off. And that's again where you give some context, right? You could say, model A is a more conservative projection. Model B is slightly more based off of these reasons, right? And then next you're going to need your personal financial statement and a personal income tax return. Again, that's why this is so critical that you keep that confidentiality agreement in there. Okay. Not all places that are going to ask for a business plan will need to see that. Those two are really, really important for loans and financing proposals, right? If you're just applying for a pitch competition, you can probably get away without including that in there. So just, again, make sure that you're applying or you're including in your business plan exactly what people need to see. All right. So last section before we jump back to the executive summary is our supporting documents. All right. This can be anything from, things that maybe you referenced earlier. Perhaps it's a blueprint for what the space would look like, or artists rendering. Perhaps it's some testimonials from people who've already used your service. Maybe you have a provisional patent that's been submitted that you can submit. Remember, don't throw everything at the plan. Unless it's really helpful, right? Is it relevant to the content? Is it relevant to what you're applying for? So yeah, it should just support what's in the plan, right? And the goal of the plan, okay? So, if a draft blueprint is available, but the plan is about securing funding for inventory, including the blueprint, it's not really helpful, right? Because it's not really serving the purpose of the business plan. Okay. Um, okay, so we're gonna go all the way up to the top now, scroll all the way up, and get back to our executive summary. Okay. Now, as it says here, this is a 1 to 2 page summary of your business plan. Okay. Now, this is where it's weird. This is not the summary of your business. This is the summary of the plan. What is the goal here? Are you applying for a loan? Are you applying for a pitch competition? What do you hope people get out of this business plan? Good understanding. They get excited, good understanding what your business does. They get excited about learning more. Okay. They want to go to the next page, right? It's also a really great place to kind of summarize in a sentence or two each of the main sections of the plan, right? So, again, not going into super details, but saying, this is the basic description of my business. This is our basic go-to-market strategy. This is our basic financial projections, right? Keep in mind the purpose of this plan, right? If it's for a financial proposal, make it clear, right? Make it clear that, hey, this is why we're here, right? Keep it interesting though. Keep it so that that you give them something that they want to keep reading. All right. And this is why we do this last, right? Because once we've done all the hard work, it'll be easier to write this last. Okay. Because it'll give you a really clear sense of all the work that you've already done. Another thing is to consider your audience. If this is for a bank, make it very professional, right? Very, very, concise. If it's for a really cool pitch competition that's doing something kind of cutting edge and interesting, you can be a little bit more casual with your language. Now, the thing is that for the most part, throughout the business plan, and this is a really key thing, is you're going to want to use third person, all right? Because you want to talk if you are your business, right? If you're someone who does yoga coaching or something like that, even if it is you're still talking about your business, right? So use the third person. Okay. So saying things like, I want to do this, say the business will, right? And that's another thing, is to really use decisive language, right? So for example, like what I just said, right? Don't say the business hopes to have grown X amount in 5 years. Say the business will, right? Again, proving to these people who are reading your plan that you know what you're talking about, right? That you've done your work, you've done the market analysis, you've talked to your customers, you've crunched the numbers, and you are sure. Okay. So use really decisive language. Last couple little tips, okay? Check your grammar, right? You don't want to look sloppy here. Have a friend read through it for mistakes, or put it aside for a couple days and come back to it and reread it again to see if you found any mistakes. Another free option online is Grammarly. They have a great software that will read through and make sure you're using really concise language. They'll give suggestions on how you can make things more clear, get rid of that passive voice, which we don't love, and also, look out for all the spelling and comma mistakes that are really common. Another thing to remember is, again, your plan will continue to change as your business grows, right? So keep it up to date, attached so the file, or keep that date attached to the file so you know you can move forward from the most recent one. And also, lastly, again, that's never going to hurt you to do as much as you can to check those numbers, right? Be optimistic but realistic when thinking through how quickly you can grow. And don't forget about seasonality again, and don't forget to pay yourself. And then, again, I said earlier, if you need help with your break-even analysis, cash flows, P&L, any of those things, we have videos here too. We're also happy to talk with you. So feel free to email any of us here at SCCF. You can reach out at hello@sccfva.org, and we're happy to talk with you about your plan. I just want to say thank you so much for being with me today. I hope that was helpful. Again, use that template below. Just, copy and paste it, or make a copy and save it to your computer, and you can have it. And hopefully this video helps give some context, gives you some ideas, and good luck writing your business plan.